paid good money to see this movie. When they go out to a theater, they want cold sodas, hot popcorn, and no monsters in the projection booth.
Everyone pretend podcasting isn't boring.
Turn it off. Turn it off.
Hey folks, welcome to a special episode of The Projection Booth. I'm your host, Mike White. On this episode, I am talking with author Thomas Golianopoulos all about his new book, The Life of Singleton, From Boyz N the Hood to Snowfall. From the title, you can probably guess that this is a biography of John Singleton, the director who left us far too early, had a very interesting career, started off super strong with Boyz N the Hood and made a bunch of other films that some people love, some people didn't really like. I remember really liking Rosewood, had a great time with that one, had a great time talking with Mr. Golianopoulos, and I hope you enjoy this interview. Definitely pick up The Life of Singleton at a bookstore near you. What's your journey when it comes to being a writer?
I initially wanted to be a teacher. And then I did one day of student teaching, and I realized that it was not for me. I went straight to my college advisor at NYU, and I immediately told him to turn my education major into a minor and turn my journalism minor into a major. Doing so, knowing that I was going to, it was going to make me stay in college for another 6 to 12 months, but I did not care. So from there, it was just the typical path. Writing for the school paper, taking a lot of journalism classes. I had one or two that really stood out. There was a sports journalism class that I enjoyed tremendously. I loved the whole reporting process was always my favorite part of the gig. And from there, it's just the normal career path. Internship, the senior year of college, fifth year of college. And then from there, just freelancing. And I got my first job less than a year after graduation. I got a job at The Source magazine, which was the Bible of hip hop, the most influential rap magazine of all time. I was there for a few years, and you know what they say, it's unless it's like your dream job, you got a jet after 2 years, and that's what I did. And I went freelancing, and that was about 20 years ago. I've been writing ever since.
What kind of stuff do you like to write about mostly?
It's always changed. At the beginning, it was funny, like my first feature article I wrote for The Source, which is, again, it's a hip hop magazine, but it was the magazine of hip hop music, culture, and politics. And the first feature article I wrote was about Cuba, in 2002. There was rumors about was it going to reopen or not. And for some reason, they assigned that to me. But I'm always pretty diverse. I started mostly with rap stories, rap features. And after a few years, I wanted to branch out. I started doing a little more sports. When I first quit The Source and I went freelance, I wrote for a few men's magazines and writing about Hollywood, writing about the arts. Sports always was huge for me. And it eventually turned into doing more deeply reported pieces where I worked on true crime stories. I always enjoyed doing diverse stuff. I probably, to the detriment of my career, maybe it would have been better if I was had a beat, if I was hyper focused on one area. If I was the guy writing about, I don't know, Atlanta rap, or the guy who wrote about the sabermetrics in baseball. I don't know. But I couldn't really focus on one thing. That's what made the book difficult, because it was man, this is the only thing I'm doing for 3 years, 4 years. But I was always a generalist. I would be working on, over 10 years ago, I had 3 different features run at the same time. And one was a wrestling story. One was a story about an actor who basically, it was Ron Lester, the guy from Varsity Blues, Billy Bob, who lost 400 pounds, and he says it killed his career. And I was doing a basketball story. So I was juggling 3 totally different stories at the same time. But I have a lot of interests.
So what is your history with John Singleton? When was the first time you saw one of his films?
The first time I saw one of his films, obviously, was Boyz N the Hood. I was actually in Greece that summer, and I missed it in theaters, and I saw it either on pay-per-view or on Blockbuster Video. I can't remember. I was like 12 when it came out, and Ice Cube was my favorite rapper, like at that time, like Ice Cube and Q-Tip from A Tribe Called Quest. So as soon as like I saw the trailer and I saw Ice Cube in it, I like my 12-year-old mind was like, I need to see this movie. So I followed Singleton through his entire career. I love Boyz N the Hood. And because he was so young, it made me kind of root for him. Like I wanted his other movies to do well, to be good and do well. I interviewed him. It was like I was mentioned before, like when I left the source and I went freelance, that was like one of my first big features. When I went freelance was I pitched an oral history of Boyz N the Hood to King Magazine, which was a men's magazine that I wrote for and I eventually worked for. And it was the 15-year anniversary, so I would put it at 2006. And it was funny because I remember pitching it like the first week of the new year, starting one of those like starting the year strong things. And I pitched that and I worked on that. It's funny, it's like the NCAA tournament's starting soon. And I remember working on that like in like March, April 2006. And I interviewed basically like everybody from the cast, save for Fishburne and Angela Bassett. And I spoke to Singleton. He was the last interview for the piece. And it was pretty funny. Like we were like holding it just for him. And he calls me up on my landline, which will tell you how long ago this was. Not even a hello. Like the first thing he says is, man, my publicist told me I had to do this and I should do this. I'm sick of talking about Boyz N the Hood. I'm 15 years deep now. I've made like X amount of movies. I'm a veteran. I got 20 minutes. Let's go. And we ended up speaking for over an hour. At the end of the call, he gave me his email address. He was like, hit me up when you need like a quote or whatever. And I did. I did so over the next couple of years, like 3 or 4 times. I think 2 or 3 times he answered back. I never met him, but interviewed him a few times and was definitely a fan of his work.
So what brought about this book? Other than obviously the anniversary is happening, you've got an affection for this film, but what made you say, listen, I am going to stop freelancing for a while and just dedicate all my time to this?
During the summer of 2020, I had written, going back even further, in 2007 at King, I had written a feature article, an investigative piece on Lloyd Avery 2, who is the blood who shoots Ricky. And it germinated from the Singleton interview for the 15-year anniversary of Boyz, where I asked him at the end of our conversation, what's the one thing you want people to take away from your movie? And he was like, that they're young Black men who were in that movie who are no longer with us. And he mentioned Tedrick Goldberg, I believe his name is, Dookie, the one who had the pacifier. He was killed in, I think, 95, I believe, like in like street racing stuff in Los Angeles. Then he mentioned Lloyd Avery too. And he goes, Lloyd Avery was a good guy, good kid, and he just got caught up in gang stuff and he got killed in Pelican Bay by his cellmate, and it was shady. And I remember looking at that line and being like, okay, I think there's definitely more here. And I researched it, and turned out he became a born again Christian in prison, and prison Pelican Bay officials stuck him with a Satan worshiper as his bunkmate, and the Satan worshiper killed Lloyd Avery. And I wrote this investigative piece in 2007, but 2007 it was in print, and we were confined by the space. It was like 3,500 words, and you had to like sacrifice like art stuff to get it up to 3,500. It was funny. And then during COVID, my editor from 2007, he was working on an online publication at the time, and he was like, hey man, like that story doesn't really exist online anymore. Like, why don't you go back and re-report it? So I went back and I re-reported the story. And again, this is 2020. Like I have my son was less than a year old. My daughter, luckily enough, was in a daycare that was still open at the time, or pre-K, I should say. And I basically, it was a project that would typically take me like 2 months, but it took me like 6 months because I just did not have as much time to work on it. But anyway, I went back in and I re-reported a lot of it, and I found out some more stuff, and published the story I think in 2021. But like towards the end of my reporting, I was talking to someone who obviously there's a lot of overlap because John put him in the movie. Like they were friends from Los Angeles. They had mutual friends and they became friends. Now, speaking to one of those mutual friends, and they tell me, if you're doing reporting like this on Lloyd, like it would be ill if you did a book on John. And I thought about it, and then I went back and I looked at his filmography, his IMDb, and it was like, oh wow, I reported the Boyz N the Hood thing, and that is an incredible story in itself. Around like 2010 or so, I did a story on Tupac's acting career for Vibe, where I spoke to a lot of his co-stars from Poetic Justice. I spoke to Singleton again for that story, and then I was like, oh, higher learning. Like, okay, that's interesting. And then wait, why does he go do Rosewood after higher learning? Oh, and he leaves Columbia and he goes to Warner Brothers. What was the story behind that? And then Rosewood bombs, even though it's a great film, and he goes into Shaft. And oh, I remember I was I was in college at the time at NYU. And I remember the gossip pages, the battles between Singleton and Scott Rudin, the rumors that Singleton was quote unquote entertaining extras in his trailer, the back and forth between Rudin not having a predominantly white crew, which was did not sit well with Singleton. And again, I went through all his movies. I was like, yo, every single movie there's is something interesting happening behind the scenes, let alone what's happening the finished product. So then I thought about it and I pitched it to my agent. And my agent was like, that's a great idea. Let's write up a proposal. But oh, wait. You're a first time author. So your proposal has to be like, long story short, I spent like 3 months and interviewed like 25 people just for the proposal. Because it was basically like, you're a first time author. You need to show that you can do this, even though I had been writing almost 20 years at that point and done features on Boyz N the Hood and Poetic. So I spent a lot of time doing that, and then we got about 30 no's. Then we paused for a little bit, and 6 months later, after a similar book became a big hit, I was told to repitch it, and we did, and we got two yeses, and I went with one of the two yeses that I thought was the better offer. And that was like the summer of 2022. From getting the idea, I remember specifically it was like the week between Christmas and New Year, because I remember being like, yo, I'm interviewing, like, why am I interviewing someone on like December 28th or whatever? And then it was like 17 months, 18 months before I got the actual deal. So I started working on it like full time, like in June 2022, which hearing that, like my heart sunk a little bit because I'm like, oh my God, that was like 4 years ago, even though like I remember it like it was yesterday.
A lot of people remember Boyz N the Hood. A lot of people remember Poetic Justice and Rosewood. But as his career went along, there are some blank spots. For me, even as a film fan, I'm like, oh yeah, I don't even remember that he did this. Diving into all that stuff, that's a huge amount of work trying to do research on all of these films in this guy's life.
It was, but I loved it. I enjoy writing more than I did in the beginning of my career, and even like when I was just freelancing full time, and it was like, all right, if you don't write, you're not going to eat. But I enjoy writing more now than I used to because I feel it comes easier. I feel like I'm better at it than I was a few years ago. It would be bad if I wasn't, but I really love the reporting stuff, the research and the reporting, like hand in hand. Like I spent, in retrospect, if I do another book again, which I hope to do soon, I'll set up a different kind of research calendar. Next time I need to do 3 months where I'm just doing research, or 4 months where I'm just doing research and not interviewing. Whereas this time I had set an unrealistic timeline for myself when it came to delivering a first draft. So I gave myself, I think, like 2 months of like full-time research. And I was like, all right, then I'm gonna start interviewing people. So like in August and September and October of 2022, I'm like sending out 25 interview requests a day, doing kind of like 4 interviews a day. And this is like pre-rev, pre-automated transcription. So I'm transcribing those damn interviews by myself and researching at the same time, like going through newspapers.com and like looking up everything looking up every mention of Rosewood in the Orlando Sentinel, say from like 1994 until 98 or whatever, and doing the same thing with Too Fast with the Miami Herald. Just try to get any little nugget from like a gossip column. Oh, Singleton was seen dining with some honey at 3 o'clock at the 3 a.m. at the Delano. Just anything like that. Like I really, really enjoy that. And another thing which other authors have mentioned is just like going on eBay and like ordering every single magazine that you can find, because I grew up reading those things. It was a trip, like getting for me it was like the press run around Poetic Justice, because you had a lot of those magazines from the summer of '93. There was a Premiere magazine, which was a vital asset. There was an article in Esquire that summer. I think was Hillary Clinton on the cover of it. Anyway, but it was just I love magazines, so it was such an excuse. Like even like when I was going into the thing with his relationship with Tyra Banks, like looking for every single Tyra Banks interview from 94, 95, 96. And it's, oh, there's like a 1 page in GQ. And I think like Tom Hanks was promoting Apollo 13 or whatever. So that would place it at what, like 95, I think. So I love the research part. So it's daunting, but I found it a lot of fun. Like if you could, if I didn't have that ridiculous turnaround time that I set for myself, I can see how people get lost in research. I got lost in the reporting towards the end of the book, where it was like I have to like hand in, I guess, like a third draft or a final draft, and I'm like still interviewing people like the day before, and it was like you have to stop. You have to stop. It's never enough, but I love that, the research and the reporting. It's fun for me.
Was there a particular thing that you found that was just like the best source or like the biggest vein when it came to so much of this book as far as the research?
I found the court documents on the murder of his friend from, that's how I start the book, and it informs Ricky's death in Boyz N the Hood. Inspired, I guess, him writing that scene. It wasn't hard to find or anything, but just being able to have the actual documents and seeing what happened and being able to recreate that. And it was funny because I didn't start with chapter 1. Like for some reason, I started with my draft. I started with like the Rosewood chapters, or it was like the period between Higher Learning and Rosewood. I think I started, for some reason, I started my reporting with that stuff, because I one of my first sources, like big sources, was a guy who worked with his production company at that time. So it was like, all right, let me just go off on what he's telling me, and I'll talk to this person. He told me about this person, that person, this person, and it led me to that mid '90s period. So I was like pretty scared about. So I'm writing the book now for a few months, and I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to start the book? I looked into it and I found that stuff, and I felt like, all right, this makes sense. This is how I should start the book. And I wouldn't have been able to do that without the documents, that police report, and all that stuff about his friend's murder.
And how about interviews? Who was the most valuable person to interview for you?
There's like 20, 30 people who were like the most valuable interviews. I spoke to some of his adult children. I spoke to some of the women who had kids with him, some of his USC people, some of his people who were friends with him like throughout his entire life, adult life. So I can't really narrow it down to one person. The one that stands out to me when it's like a left field, like I love, like I grew up writing features, doing like profile work and all that. And I hated when the profiles had 3 secondaries, and it was always like one family member, like one teammate or like collaborator if we were talking about artist, and one business person. And that was like my thing when I was like writing profiles. I always wanted to get, I call them like left field secondaries. And like my left field secondary in this book was I spoke to this rabbi who got in touch with Singleton like during a tough time in his life. And I devoted like kind of like I'd say a quarter of a chapter to their relationship until what was going on at the time. And that's something that I was like very happy about, like that I found that, and I felt like it added. He answered. I feel like like they came in contact with each other like after Singleton got into a car accident that resulted in the death of a woman. He was in charge. There was no like blood or alcohol. There was no alcohol or drugs in his system, but it was tragic nonetheless. And he felt horrible about it. And he got in contact with someone gave him a book that this rabbi had written, and they were friends for the next like 10 years or so. That was one of those left field secondaries that I thought was added some flavor to the book, really.
What was the most surprising thing that you found during your research?
Everybody knows that Boyz N the Hood is his life story. Obviously, he changed certain things about it, like what led him to living with his dad, and like the friend group and all that. But I was surprised at how much his personal life like informed like all his other movies. Like with Poetic Justice, like he took a road trip up to the Bay Area to film like a rap music video. And it's funny, like I'm saying this now and I'm like, did I put that in the book? I was like, I think I didn't devote as much time to that as I should have, if I even did. But like something like that, and something how in higher learning, like the black students were kind of like they mirrored like his crew from USC. Like they wore trench coats and like backwards baseball caps, and the parties that they had, they were like shot for shot. Like he tried to recreate like the parties that he had in his friend's dorm room in at SC. And then something like Baby Boy, which going into this book, I had no idea how closely it mirrored some certain aspects of his personal life. Like obviously it wasn't like the same thing, but Baby Boy was something that was almost like a palate cleanser for him coming off of Shaft, and he wanted to make it intense. He made it intensely personal and true kind of to himself. But a lot of the interfamily dynamics in that movie were similar to his personal life. All his best work, I feel, was stuff that I don't want to say happened to him or whatever, but it's where he can put himself into it. He wrote a few scripts that never got made, and those two kind of were in that vein, and it was better than like the work that was, like for hire stuff. Like I actually like Too Fast, but Shaft I thought was I did not enjoy that. Abduction, obviously. But yeah, like his best work was the stuff that he was like invested in personally, and he was informed by personally.
I know he opened up a lot of doors to a lot of filmmakers. I remember like the Hughes brothers following fast on his heels, but what kind of struggles did he go through when it came to like trying to get gigs in Hollywood?
His struggles came after he was established. He came in as the golden boy. He came in at a perfect time. Like it was pretty fortuitous how it happened that Columbia was going through this turmoil and they needed product badly, and he had connections, and he got the movie made, and they left him alone. It was a little $5 million movie that was shooting in South Central, and they left him alone. Whereas later on, it became a problem. Like he had this saying where it was like, if he was white, he would have had more jobs. Like, and he got unfairly, what's what I'm looking for, brandish as being like troublesome or difficult. And it was because he had opinions, and it was because he wasn't shy about sharing those opinions, and it was because he believed he knew best. And this, like, every single film, like every filmmaker is difficult. Like somebody like I spoke to was like, James Cameron's difficult, David Fincher's difficult, Oliver Stone's difficult. Like even guys who aren't those at that status are difficult, and they still get gigs. There are a few directors who caught strays. Like I forgot who said this. They were like, "Yo, McG like makes flop after flop, and he still gets $100 million to do what he wants to do." I forgot if that made it into the book or not, but that was something that one of Singleton's friends told me. Yeah, and then there was this time in the late 2000s when he didn't make a movie for a long time after Four Brothers. And that was another thing, like going into the book where I was just like, why did it take 6 years for him like to follow up Four Brothers? Like it was incredibly profitable. It wasn't like a great movie, but it made a lot of money, and that's like 51% of the battle, really. And why did it take them so long? And you got to look at what was going on in the industry at that time. Like it was the move towards IP and sequels, and they were people basically telling him like, we're going to do black movies like only like Tyler Perry style, like where it's like a $3 million budget and you do one take and it's like a 21-day shoot. And so it became more difficult for him as he went on. It's funny, you'd think like in the beginning like it would be more difficult, but it was the opposite in his case.
Yeah, you would think like by that time he would have paid his dues and been able to get those jobs.
Yeah, his movies were incredible. Like the only movie that wasn't profitable was Rosewood. Even the movies like there was diminishing returns on those three Columbia movies, from Boys to Poetic to Higher Learning, still made money. You know, Shaft, for all of its production turmoil, made money. Too Fast, same thing. Four Brothers, like I spoke to Lorenzo de Bonaventura, who's the producer of that film, and he said how Brad Gray told him like that was Paramount's most profitable movie of 2005, dollar for dollar. And so his movies made money, but he didn't get the kind of jobs that he thought he should have gotten, that he probably didn't warrant based on his track record and resume.
What were the most challenging parts of this assignment, other than actually getting somebody to say yes to you?
The book isn't sponsored by the estate, and there are certain people, namely his parents, who wouldn't talk to me, and I totally understand that. I know it's ridiculous that I like almost arrogant that I would even ask, but as a journalist, that's kind of what you do. But working around that was difficult because there are obviously people like he was very close, especially with his mom, and there are people obviously who wanted to talk to me, and without her involvement, they had no interest because they knew how close he was with her. So it made me like work double hard. It's like I wouldn't have had to interview as many people as I did if I had the approval of the estate, but I didn't. And so that made things difficult. It was always like a dance. Do I talk to this person? Do I reach out to this person? Because they're probably not going to talk to me. So it was like it added another layer of difficulty to the reporting, but that's totally understandable. I totally understand why they wouldn't want to speak with me, but I still think I wrote a really good book. And if you're a fan of John Singleton's work, or if you were one of the thousands of people who had weird interactions with him, like he was very outgoing in public. There are so many people who when I talk about getting lost in the reporting, like there are so many people who I could have reached out to that I didn't, just because I just didn't have time. And there are so many people who are like, oh yeah, I talked to John one time at this place, or I talked here, over there. He was very social, and everybody knew him. So this one guy I spoke to for the piece was like, called him like basically like the mayor of Los Angeles. Like he could go anywhere he wanted, anytime, and bouncers would like open the velvet rope for him. Like he could get it anywhere. Like it wasn't in the book just because it just didn't fit really, but like he scammed his way into the Titanic premiere. He just showed up with Shane Salerno, who's one of the writers on Shaft, and it was like, we don't have a ticket. What do you mean? It's like, don't worry. and he just talked to somebody, and he got into the Titanic premiere in like December '97. And it's funny, like you can go on Getty Images, and you can see the pictures of him.
What's been the reception to the book so far?
The people who've read it really like it. I wish more people would read it. The people close to him who I spoke to for the book, like who were primary sources, like people who were close to John and spoke to me knowing that the estate wasn't involved, they hit me up afterwards and were like, "You nailed it. You perfectly captured it. Warts and all, that's what John would have liked." He was very adamant about showing real life on camera. And I'm not speaking for someone who I just had a few phone conversations with, but people who were close to him said that's what he would have wanted for a book. Like he was, I think, like he joked about like writing his memoirs one day, and it was like, I'm too young, and that's super tragic when you think of it. But reception's been good, and I just want more people to read it because I think the people who read it really like it. So there you go.
I really enjoyed the hell out of it. So it was so thorough without being boring and still keeping it very interesting and keeping, like you said, the warts and all. Like he's not a hero, he's not a villain, he's just a man. And just
Just a person, yeah.
yeah, reading about his life was just fascinating.
That was like the one thing that was like in my mind the entire time was, I don't know if it's an actual word or term, but like readability. Like I wanted people to tear through it. It's 380 pages, but it's like something you can read in a week. And just not to get like too nerdy writer, like I was very cognizant of where I ended certain chapters, where I ended sections inside of a chapter, like to keep you wanting to read more. Where it's, if you're like reading on the subway, like I do, or on the train, you're like, oh, I need to finish this chapter before my stop. Or if you're like reading in bed, like other people, it's, oh man, I just came to the end of the chapter, but I want to see what happens next. Let me keep reading. That was something that I purposefully, I feel like every writer does, but I was just super into it. Like how, like even like down to the wording, just to not leave it on a cliffhanger, like dun dun dun, but just to make you want to turn the page when you finish either that section or that chapter.
So what's next for you?
I would like to write more books, but the thing I like more than writing books is getting a paycheck every 2 weeks. So right now I have a full-time gig. I'm the sports editor at Complex. I've been doing that since like Labor Day of last year. So it's been like since then. I enjoy it a lot, but in the future, I definitely want to write more books. I don't know if I want to do, I want to do like another biography just because I feel like I think this is a good book, but I feel like there's certain things I learned that I can do better next time in all three stages, I guess, the research, the reporting, and the writing. Oh, four, I should say, the promotion, which is almost as important, if not more. But it was funny because like I started the job right when the promotion should have started, and I wasn't able to do as much as I should have or was able to. But anyway, yeah, I definitely want to write another book. And it's funny, my office is next to a bookstore in Manhattan. And I go in there like once every 2 weeks, and you just look around at like the nonfiction. Like I'm in a book club, so like I read all my fiction in my book club like once a month, but like otherwise I'm like reading more nonfiction. I know that's like kind of a stereotype of like middle-aged guy getting into like his nonfiction. Like my next book is a book on the '87 stock market crash. So I love just like going through the book aisles and checking out like what's popping, what's interesting, like just trying to get inspiration. Like I have a few ideas, obviously, biographies, but it's just, I don't know. I do know that there are certain things that I did in this book that I wouldn't do again. If I don't know if I would want to do something again where I don't have the approval of the estate. Not just because of quality, like even though obviously but at the same time that goes into the whole like authorized, unauthorized thing, where if it's authorized, it's going to be sanitized most likely. But just the stress it put on me, it was not pleasant. And it wasn't like the external forces, it was internal. It was like, why am I doing this? Like without someone's approval but then at the end, it's a public figure and public figures, like their lives are public. Yeah, there's certain things that, again, like it's mostly that. It's mostly to do it again and improve. It's like I'm really into, even though I'm like middle aged, I'm really into. I don't say not looking backwards, but just like, trying to get better at certain things. And like this job is there's so many things that I hadn't done before, and I feel like it's good for my brain to try different things. And I'm just really into that. I do weird things. If I go for a run for like 40 minutes, I'll try to like remember like every song I listened to during my run. And then like when I get back home, I'll try to jot down the names of the songs that I listen to without just like through a mnemonic device or something. So I'm into like, I hope I don't sound like a weirdo. I'm into like kind of like improving like a machine almost. And not to say, I'm trying not to use AI, but that's the thing that comes to mind. I feel like I want to get better and learn more, and in writing books, because I love books. When I started my career, it was like all about magazines, and I love magazines, obviously, but like magazines are dead, and I felt like I spent so many years like trying to perfect something, like the long form feature, I guess what it was called. You'd always like just read every single magazine, every great writer you can think of, magazine writer, and now I kind of just want to get better at writing books. It's because I enjoy it a lot, even though it's a lot of work and the payoff isn't great.
Mr. Golianopoulos, I had such a great time talking with you. Thank you so much for your time today.
No, thank you, man. I appreciate the time. I appreciate you being into the book and for your support, for sure.
Woke up quick at about noon, just thought that I had to be in Compton soon. I gotta get drunk before the day begins, before my mother starts bitching about my friends. About to go and damn near went blind. Young niggas at the pad throwing up gang signs. Ran in the house and grabbed my clip with the Mac 10 on the side of my hip. Bailed outside and pointed my weapon. Just as I thought, the fools kept stepping. Jumped in the foe, hit the juice on my ride. I got front and back and side to side. Then I let the Alpine play. Bumping new shit by NWA. It was gangster at the top of the list. Then I played my old shit, it went something like this. Cruising down the street in my 6'4", jocking the bitches, slapping the hoes. Went to the park to get the scoop. Knuckleheads out there, cold shooting some hoops. A car pulls up, who can it be? A fresh El Camino rolling Kilo G. He rolled down his window and he started to say, it's all about making that GTA. Cause the boys in the hood are always hard. You come talking that trash, we'll pull your card. Knowing nothing in life but to be legit. Don't quote me, boy, cause I ain't said shit.
Get the fuck out! Motherfucker say what?
Donald B's in the place to give me the pace. He say my man JD is on free base. The boy JD was a friend of mine till I caught him in my car trying to steal an Alpine. Chase him up the street to call a truce. The silly motherfucker pulls out a deuce. Little did he know I had a loaded 12 gauge. One sucker dead, LA Times front page. Cause the boys in the hood are always hard. You come talking that trash, we'll pull your car. Knowing nothing in life but to be legit. Don't quote me, boy, cause I ain't said shit. Hell, and I wanna wanna get ill, so I went to a spot where my homeboys chill. The fellas out there making that dollar. I pulled up in my 6'4" Impala. They greet me with a 40 and I start drinking. And from the 8-ball, my breath starts stinking. Left to get my girl to rock that body. Before I left, I hit the Bacardi. Went to her house to get her out of the past. Dumb hoe said something that made me mad. She said something that I couldn't believe, so I grabbed a stupid bitch by a nappy ass weave. She started talking shit, wouldn't you know? Reached back like a pimp, slapped the hoe. My father jumped up and he started to shout, so I threw it right across and knocked his old ass out. Cause the boys in the hood are always hard. You come talking that trash, we'll pull your card. Knowing nothing in life but to be legit. Don't quote me, boy, cause I ain't said shit. I'm rolling hard now under control. Then wrap the 6'4" around a telephone pole. I looked at my car and I said, oh brother, I throw it in the gutter and go buy another. Walking home and I see the G ride now. Cat is driving, Kilo on the side. As they busted a U, they got pulled over. An undercover cop in a dark green Nova. Cat got beat for resisting arrest. He socked a pig in the head for ripping his guest. Now G is caught for doing the crime. Fourth offense on the boy, he'll do some time. Cause the boys in the hood are always hard. You come talking that trash, we'll pull your cart. Knowing nothing in life but to be legit. Don't quote me, boy, cause I ain't said shit. I went to get them out, but there was no bail. The fellas caused a riot in the county jail. 2 days later in municipal court, Kilo G on trial, cold cut a fort. Destruction of the court, said the judge. On a 6-year sentence, my man didn't budge. Bailiff came over to turn him in. Kilo G looked up and gave a grin. He yelled out fire. Then came Susie. The bitch came in with a submachine Uzi. Police shot the bitch but didn't hurt her. Both upstate for attempted murder. Cause the boys in the hood are always hard. You come talking that trash, we'll pull your card. Knowing nothing in life but to be legit. Don't quote me, boy, cause I ain't said shit. Yeah, I kicked a little ass, but that was a blast from the past, motherfucker.